What a year 2020 has been for People's Resource Center. Hello, I'm Jenny Fabian, Executive Director of PRC here in DuPage County. Welcome to our evening of gratitude. We are so pleased you have joined us tonight. We're excited to share with you how PRC has been resilient and stayed strong during the COVID pandemic. We never know who will come to the door next at PRC, and that has never been more true than right now. We've met young parents who are unexpectedly unemployed and turn to us for help. We've met seniors burdened with anxiety of how they will make it through these days, and we've welcomed hundreds of families who have never come to a food pantry before. In March, our whole array of services had to adapt and change rapidly. What did not change was the PRC community's mission to be here when neighbors need us. And what did not change was your kindness. I'm so proud of how PRC quickly adjusted to safely care for our workers and for those seeking help. Most of our emergency services take place outdoors in the parking lot. Since March, we have reached over 3,800 families with emergency services and filled over 24,000 cars with food. And the creativity continues with new virtual services in other PRC programs. You'll hear more about those tonight. The community has stepped up in so many ways to keep PRC going strong. By coming to volunteer, checking in and caring how we're doing, hosting drives for food and supplies, as well as your generous donations. And we are so grateful for your support. Enjoy the rest of tonight's program. I'll be back at the end.
My name is Ken Madden. I'm the director of the food pantry for PRC. And so this is our parking lot. This is our food pantry. Since March, when we began, when COVID happened, we've been serving our clients in a different fashion. So right now clients will pull into our parking lot. We will have someone meet them in their car and then get some basic information, and then in about 20 minutes we will have food out to their car. This is our food pantry itself. Back before March, we had our clients coming in here and they would shop for their food. Now we have all of our volunteers shopping, filling bags, filling boxes, putting food in carts for people, and this is where it all happens.
One initial huge change was operations on site. My department oversees intake during food pantry, and food pantry services got moved outside. And the group of volunteers that previously did intake were not necessarily the same people that were involved on those on-site pantry days.
In these times when not everyone can help, others have stepped up in their place. So everyone has a part to play in our community, and sometimes there's a time and place for that. And I'm so proud to be associated with a group of staff members and volunteers that have really stepped up in a time like this to, go above and beyond.
When the pandemic first hit, one of my worries was we would have to say goodbye temporarily to so many of our volunteers. And not only would we miss seeing them, but we need volunteers to keep us up and running. And over the course of the summer, 700 people raised their hands to say they would volunteer and help us keep PRC going. And that's when I knew PRC was going to be okay.
I was going about once a week, and I would typically work with this girl that was a high school or maybe young college student. And then one day I went back maybe a month later, and her mom was there too. So it was the high school student and her mom. And it was just really neat to volunteer with like a family.
We've always had a huge amount of volunteer support. Like we PRC couldn't do what we do without it. But throughout COVID, especially like those initial phases, it was pretty awesome and surprising to see how many new faces came and were willing to do like whatever.
There's probably about 3 different volunteers. There's the volunteer that was with us before the pandemic and is still with us. There's the volunteer that started
in the middle of March and has stayed with us. And there's the volunteers that were with us before the pandemic, took a break, and have now come back.
The volunteer department had to really pivot in the spring and figure out how to make sure that the food pantry had the right number of volunteers present to be able to make food distribution possible. So suddenly my team was switching over to staffing for food pantry. So that involved making a lot of phone calls to folks, making sure that we had enough people there to help every day, and making sure that everyone was as safe as possible, and that we made it a good experience for the volunteers.
We average about 100 pounds of groceries per family every time they come. We can provide that food to them. That's going to help them in the long run. So I like that we've provided stability to our families.
We have seen hundreds of families who've never turned to PRC for food or any other services before, and they're coming to us now.
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. We had a big job fair. Our 5th annual job fair was March 12th, and we had over 100 job seekers and we had 20 employers. People were just starting to talk about a pandemic that was coming, and there was so much excitement in the air in our Westmont building. It was great and incredible, and people went home with a lot of hope and encouragement. And on Monday, we were shut down. We went from, to throw numbers out, like 2.7% unemployment in DuPage County. In 4 days, we're at 14%.
One of the things that a person who is in need, they don't want to really be there. I mean, anybody with pride doesn't really want to be there, but they know they need help. And if you read the Bible, one of the things you read in the Bible is helping your neighbor as if you would be helping yourself.
Just like any of us experience impacts during COVID, the individuals and families that come to us for help for whatever, whether it's for an art class or because they need groceries or the utilities are going to be turned off, losing a job or having your hours cut or having somebody sick can be, hugely impactful for families.
I'm here to help you, but I'm also here to enable you so that you're able to, at some point in time, maybe even volunteer here, but that you can go back into the community and pursue the goals that you want to pursue.
I recently had a chance to sit down with several of the people who are responsible for People's Resource Center. These are people who were members of a group called the Religious Education Committee. And back in the 60s and 70s, these were people that put their beliefs into action. They finally got a little house in Wheaton and started passing out food through the basement window. And that was the start of what eventually became PRC. And the words of the people who started this really, really were inspiring to me. I hope you'll enjoy it too.
Long before there was a People's Resource Center, before there were art programs and closed closets and computer classes, there was a dedicated group of DuPage County people who cared about their neighbors and who wanted to apply their faith and beliefs to real-world service. They were called the REC Group, the Religious Education Community, most of them in their 20s and 30s, and many with young families. With Father Tom Payton and Dorothy McIntyre leading the way, the REC Group established the foundation that would eventually become the People's Resource Center. 50 years later, some of those REC Group members still recall the early days.
The thing started with really a bunch of families that were very involved in early civil rights. The way REC used to work is a lot of people had a lot of different interests. And so what would happen is somebody would present an idea or an action or something that they wanted to do, and the rest of the group would sort of individually decide whether they want to go work with them on that or not go work with them on it.
Tom Payton provided the spiritual basis for this. Dorothy McIntyre provided everything else. I considered her a one-person PRC.
There was no staff back then, no board, no budget, and no office. Just people who cared and were willing to work at making a difference.
The way the PRC developed, it was very gradual. Adding this, not we're going to get out there and we're going to have this big place. What it was is what do people need now?
Our main focus was here, was in the suburbs. Rec was spread out. There were groups in Wheaton, Winfield, and at Maryknoll. And probably even more than 125 families. What we were doing was, at that time, very much out of the ordinary. Now it's taken for granted.
Right. And so when rec people saw a problem, and they didn't talk about it a lot, but they took action. But we never lost the spirit of cooperation, and that I think was very, very important, because there were just these numerous problems in DuPage County where everybody says there's no problem.
The first food pantry was in a little house on Indiana Avenue in Wheaton, where rec members would hand boxes of food out through a basement window to people waiting outside, and those lines grew longer and longer. In addition to the food pantry, rec members found themselves involved in other programs that began to take shape.
A lot of the people got involved were touch base with PRC, but then things sprung out of that, which is, I think, the coolest part of the whole thing.
Well, at that point, really, the discrimination against housing, the discrimination against anybody who was not white.
I was involved in trying to get legislation through the town of Winfield to have open housing, which means we wanted some apartment buildings. Well, it had to be the computer program and the jobs program. Yeah, I started those programs.
And there was a free dental clinic. And then there was another group, the Family Shelter thing. There were several members of REC that were part of the Family Shelter Network.
And now, so many years later, the impact of those founders is still being felt.
I had a store clerk say something to me about giving away things in your wardrobe. And she mentioned she volunteered at the PRC. I said, oh, that's really interesting. I'm on the board of the PRC. And she said, well, I was a customer of the PRC at one time. I used it. So now I come back and I volunteer.
It's doing what I think any organization that's trying to help people should do. It's taking care of immediate needs, and also it's looking forward to long-term needs, literacy, and the jobs.
And REC is a very small group now, but the spirit of action is still there.
I guess I was amazed at how far it got to the PRC, because, you know, things were just, I mean, Dorothy's attitude was just, you know, just have faith, it's going to work out.
Well, I think what is always been unique about the People's Resource Center, for instance, is two things. One is we always used to say, leave your dogma at the door. And the other thing is there has always been a sense of dignity that we always tried to impart to the people that we help, because it could be you.
Thank you from all of us at PRC and the communities we serve. You have made an amazing difference in so many lives.
People that, you know, if they lose their job or they lost their house, you know, you have your programs in place to help them. If it's an education issue, we have that also. But once that person gets that immediate help, the PRC has always had another piece to that, which would be, how can we enable this person to be self-sufficient, independent, and proud of themselves, that they can go back out into the community. And proof of that is that some of our volunteers previously used the services of the PRC.
In the beginning, we were just checking in on volunteers to make sure they were okay. There's a lot of concern about clients and how the rapid shift in environment would affect them. But we slowly realized that now more than ever, people really needed us.
In the jobs program, our clients needed so much support, and it was one thing when you can sit next to someone and help them with an electronic application or help them with their resume. When you have a screen and technology dividing you, it was so hard for our clients, but we had to do it that way. So we're continuing with our one-on-one job coaching. We still offer 5 or 6 workshops a month. We started probably early May. So we had about a month to pivot and make sure that our coaches were comfortable and our volunteers were comfortable, because they are PRC. They are the Job Assistance Program. And what are they capable of doing? What are you comfortable doing? What technology do you know?
We had to make quite a few changes because we're used to having an art studio where people can come in and get their materials and take classes. So at first we started with videos and projects that we thought would be easy for people to do with materials they had at home. But then it came clear to us that as we were moving along, we needed to start to explore how we could do things on Zoom and using virtual programming.
Being at home, remote, I've been remote for the last 8 months, and you know, if you have a computer problem at work, you just call IT and you call John and help me, and he'll say, is it plugged in? When you have somebody right there for IT to help you, your life's a lot easier. We actually have called our IT team and said, can you call this client, can you help them, they're struggling, and they have. So again, that just shows like some of the wraparound services of PRC that help everyone.
I think we're doing everything that we did before. So we're doing conversation circles, we're doing ESL one-on-one tutoring, GED prep, citizenship help, TOEFL help, and it's all virtual. And I have to credit the resilience of our volunteers in you know, understanding that, hey, we're really concerned about clients, and the only way we can actually reach out and help them now is to bridge this digital divide.
We've had to change some of our workshops because we used to have a workshop called How to Master the Phone Interview. Well, it overnight became How do you master a phone interview and a Zoom interview? All of a sudden, people that didn't think they had to rely on a computer to get an interview, you know, we used to worry about making sure that you're dressed properly and you polished your shoes. Well, a Zoom interview is from the waist up, so now we have to talk about how do you present yourself in front of a camera. So there's a whole new set of dynamics that people have had to embrace. At the same time, they're worried about getting a job and feeding their family.
I had a couple artists that said, a few months in, once I started letting people know, hey, we're gonna start, you know, these Zoom classes, we're starting this, we're starting that. A couple people like said, oh my God, I can finally get my paints out. I'm so excited, you know. So people were so happy to have the chance, have the reason to start like being creative and making art again. And I think that was huge, and it worked that way for the volunteers as well.
So this one client realizes that she can't be in her apartment with all the other people in there, and so she's doing lessons in her car, actually, over the phone, and that's how she gets lessons done. And you know, that's her level of commitment, which is already inspiring. And the tutor that's working with her is even more amazing in that she's like, okay, I'm going to tutor you over the phone. I'm going to mail you the things that you need since you don't have like technology, and that's how we're going to get visuals into this scenario. And that is just so inspiring.
We've been able to partner with the summer science classes over the summer. That was a huge one, doing our kids art program in conjunction with the summer science program, which we've never done before, you know, so getting to team up with them and making art accessible for kids during the science programming over the summer. That was like a really big, I'm really proud of that, because that took a lot, and that was at the beginning, so that took a lot of effort for just, you know, our small art team to figure out, but we had so much support.
We have job coaches that are now running workshops and resume writers that are running orientation, and everybody's just stepped in because they know our clients need us.
We had some early adopters. We piloted some conversation classes early on, and I think our volunteers sort of slowly encouraged each other. We created a community to sort of give each other confidence and support that we could do this, that we could do tutoring online. We did a lot of tech support online, so much tech support online for our clients, for our volunteers, because that's what was needed, you know.
And when you think about how much technology volunteers had to learn very quickly in order to be able to do that, Some of those people had never used Zoom before, so it was a completely new experience for them.
I'm really proud that I get to work here and that I get to tell stories like this, and it's that I don't know, that we can be this point of inspiration during a time of deep fear, anxiety, and just disruption.
The need is a different kind of need than we've seen before, and the community response has been absolutely overwhelming and caring. This is a community that cares for one another, and that's going to get us through.
Our volunteers are a mix of people that come just to give their time and knowledge and experience, or just because they want to connect with people. We have a lot of volunteers that also support our programs financially or through in-kind donations. And they've done that in like seriously. People go, okay, what else do you need? And then poof, it would be there.
So many groups, individuals, students, civic clubs have done drives for us. They've raised support and added volunteers in new and creative ways. Businesses have stepped up. People want to help, and right now there are so many limitations in the ways that are possible, and people are finding wonderful ways to show their love and care for their neighbors.
I think that having PRC available for volunteers right now to be able to get involved is really important because people want to give back during this time. You know, a lot of people feel that our social interactions have gone down, because we don't have as many social gatherings to go to, and PRC provides a place for people to get connected, whether they're attending a Zoom meeting with their, fellow volunteers every week or every month, or if they're coming in and volunteering in the food pantry. I think it provides a place of connection for a lot of people that's very important right now.
We have so many dedicated volunteers who've been with us every day for years and right now need to stay home. So we miss those folks. We look forward to welcoming them back when it's safe to do it. I want to thank all the new folks and warmly welcome the new volunteers and hope they stay with us as well when this is all over. It's been a new challenge every day, and folks are stretching and growing and helping one another.
Volunteer engagement has been a big focus for the volunteer department during this time. We want to make sure that people feel still connected to the organization and connected to what we do, even if they aren't able to be on site with us. So we've done a couple of different things during this time. A main thing has been doing check-in calls. We've made over 700 of them so far. And in those calls, we just say, how are you? How are you doing? How's your family? And it's really just a social call. So for a lot of those people, it's been a really great experience for them to hear from us, and of course for us to hear from them and to hear those familiar voices and catch up with folks that we miss. So we send about 120 birthday cards out every month, and we send about 60 anniversary cards every month. And of course we have the newsletter, The Grapevine, that goes out every Friday as well, to stay connected with folks.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for helping. I can lift a couple boxes, but I need the entire team, and that's you guys, to help us with this distribution of food.
While the pandemic is something that's real significant right now, the PRC has encountered other much smaller issues that have come along in the past, and they've always been there to help out.
Because it has been a tremendous time in our community, and they've all stepped up to really make it happen, and it really makes me proud to work with them and to be a part of this organization.
I've never worked for an organization that just is so strong, and you might get knocked over, but you're not going to stop.
Thank you for joining us tonight. As we look toward year end and plan for 2021, we are excited for the future. Along with serving our neighbors in the pandemic, we're continuing our focus of our longer-term priorities. As PRC continues to support people, we're moving forward to improve our facilities and technology and to plan for growth. We don't know how long it will be necessary for us to work in this adjusted way. We miss seeing all of you and look forward to the time we can be together again.
PRC will continue to adapt and respond as needs arise, living out our values of compassion, dignity, and creativity. We know we will make it through these current challenges as a community that cares for one another. I invite you to visit our new website to learn even more about PRC programs and upcoming events. And be sure to check out the upcoming live stream of a PRC classic, Gavin Coyle's Holiday Concert, which will air on December 18th.
Thank you so much for being with us and for all you do to support PRC. We wish you a wonderful holiday season and good health to you and yours.